Welcome back to the SampanViking on China channel. And today discussion is going to be called Are We Sleepwalking into Conflict? This is an obvious continuation of the subject I've been looking at over the last few weeks, which is the pressure being put on both Russia and China by the US and NATO, and the Russian-Chinese response to it being a double-headed reaction based on mutual red lines to respond both in areas such as the Ukraine and Taiwan simultaneously, thus splitting the US response. One would think that the prospect of going to a conflict in such circumstances is going to be very remote. It is everybody is aware what the military realities are on either side, what the consequences would be, what the results of double failure for NATO would be to lose both the Ukraine and indeed to lose Taiwan in a lightning conflict. And so rational heads would surely be doing everything to prevent this from happening. And indeed, this may very well and in all probability be the case. And this is, of course, the day that Biden and Putin are having a virtual summit, a virtual discussion, in order to discuss basically the Ukraine crisis. Putin has given some firm demands, ultimatums effectively, saying that there must be legally enforced agreement to the Ukraine and NATO mustn't expand any further east. Lots of huffing and puffing, especially from the neocon elements to whom such words are anathema, having to take instruction from anyone seriously violates their sense of exceptionalism. But the reality is the cool heads must realize that an accommodation must be made, otherwise there would be a double disaster. And we hope that that is indeed happening as we speak, and that this current crisis will resolve itself in the not too distant future, down to the cool heads slowly arriving, taking the heat out of the situation, and slowly arriving at a solution for stability that would take us at least several more years into the future, whilst the situation continues to unfold. Which, of course, really means that the strength of the Eurasian powers increases to the point where it is better able to dictate a more permanent solution, which is based on their likings and supported by their ability to enforce. But there is always a danger. Um, and the danger is that we end up sleepwalking into conflict because the cool heads are absent, and more likely just a total lack of absence of anybody in real control on the NATO side. And this comes down to a lot of things that you hear being said by Western leaders, Western politicians, the media, who seem to think that they can say things, that words have no consequence, that they can say what they like, they can make any threat, they can make any insult, and it is of no consequence. They seem to fail to understand that in Russia and China you have two great powers. One, a military and nuclear power, the other, a military and economic power. And you cannot simply insult, belittle, or disrespect such countries without the threat, the danger of reaction to things being said. Words have consequences, and whilst you may be able to talk down and lecture to very poor developing countries, small countries, weak countries, you cannot do the same to large, strong, and powerful ones. And this, I think, is the danger, is that the more that the rhetoric gets ratcheted up, is that the greater the concern on the other side that things are going to happen Putin is as cool as customer as you are going to meet, and thank God. Well, I would say that if I wasn't an atheist, but thank God, because if anybody had been like in control of Russia like another Trump, God alone knows what the consequences already would have been. But even somebody with the patience of a proverbial saint like Vladimir Putin must have a point, and it does seem to be arriving, when he starts to think, I have nothing to lose here. All I'm doing is waiting to give the initiative to the other side, who have no good faith and are simply looking to deliver a blow against me at a time of their choosing, when instead I should be taking the initiative and getting my retaliation in first. And of course, if under those circumstances coordinated with their Chinese allies, President Xi of China would undoubtedly be taking a similar view, because there is similar rhetoric being directed at him and China, plus of course the knowledge that if the West, if NATO is prepared to deal with Russia, Putin's Russia, in bad faith, that same bad faith must be assumed to be in evidence, being used against China as well. So the two allies would simply coordinate a reaction and say the time is coming. There is no good justification for holding still. We need to get our retaliation in first. That's quite a shocking thing to say. We always like to say is that we anticipate that the West would start the shooting, but the preemption of trouble is the most troublesome part. And when the rhetoric is just too toxic to be able to handle, when you are insulting and belittling and disrespecting major powers, that literally is fighting talk, and you cannot be surprised if those powers respond accordingly. Of course, it might otherwise be that that while some people are cautioning in the West are cautioning against reckless action, others are just letting it go because the leadership of the West is so incredibly weak. Biden is really just a doddery old man. Kamala Harris is not a third-rate non-entity that nobody likes. Blinken has been shown to be wholly an ideologue who is wholly inadequate to the task of serious, high-level international diplomacy with rival and competing powers, tier-level competitors, and that leaves a major vacuum into which any kind of lower-level lunatic can initiate something, and then once initiated, the leadership do not have the strength of personality to be able to put a brake on without making it appear a massive loss of face. And or indeed the fact that it would start that the other side, that Russia, China, would no longer be prepared to believe in good faith, irrespective, and certainly wouldn't believe in the strength of the ability of the current Western leadership to do anything about it. And so, again, a very slight provocation could be all it needs to light the spark, which lights the fire that starts the conflict. And that is a very, very dangerous situation to be in. I don't think there's too much doubt about that. Well, I'm going to wrap this up here. I'm obviously going to wait for the outcome of the Biden and Putin discussion. There hopefully will be some concrete measures in order to calm things down, at least create a breathing space for calmer heads to thrash out a deal for greater stability. And who knows, it might even be that on the ground, the Ukrainian army, I know that people have been saying that, that there was a recent article in the London Times that visited the Ukrainian army and found it in a parlous state, dug in almost First World War conditions into a network of trenches, bogged down, unable to advance, unable to retreat. And if any fighting did start, if they started any fighting, the prospect of the Russian Federation army intervening massively in order to end the situation once and for all. So that hopefully would be a sufficient hold on the events by making sure that the people most likely to light the fire that started the conflict were prevented, were what's the word I'm looking for? Were not enthusiastic about going forward, and indeed a similar argument being made of, a similar argument being levelled at the independence forces on Taiwan, is that the defence forces of Taiwan really are not in any state in order to be able to resist a Chinese thrust. So they're not going to take anything precipitous themselves, because they know that the reaction is going to be overwhelming against them, and that the chances of American support, meaningful support, are pretty much non-existent. There we are. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like. If you don't subscribe to the channel, please do. It's free and helps this channel to grow. If you would like others to listen to what I have to say, please share. And if you have a view, would like to ask a question, or simply express support for the channel, please leave a comment and I will reply where appropriate. Until then, I look forward to you joining me on the next video.